Not the guy he thinks he is. He's not the guy you think he is. And I'm going to show that.
Conor McGregor is a guy who everybody's putting a lot of stock into as being one of the next great stars.
This is the lottery fight, and this man took it on his last contract.
They called him a fluke. They promised to end the hype. From 10-year champions to elite wrestlers, these fighters swore to humiliate Conor McGregor. But then, the Octagon door closed. Welcome back. Today, we look at the men who talked the biggest game and paid the ultimate brutal price.
Relaxed and smiling. Oh! He slipped him!
Before we dive into the carnage, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe to the Band-Aid Battalion MMA. This is the home for the hardest-hitting MMA stories on the planet. Join the squad and never miss a knockout. Dustin Poirier, UFC 178.
It's the first time I've ever fought anybody who talks themselves up this much, but it's fun, but it's also a little aggravating.
Before the private jets and the $100 million checks, Conor McGregor was just a loudmouth prospect from Dublin. But to Dustin the Diamond Poirier, he was a circus act.
He'll wake up and he'll bow before me.
In 2014, Poirier wasn't just another fighter. He was a top-tier contender who had seen it all. He looked at Conor and saw a quiet little hillbilly who talked too much. Poirier swore he was the one to expose the Irishman, promising to drag him into deep water and drown the hype once and for all.
Not the guy he thinks he is. He's not the guy you think he is. And I'm going to show that.
The atmosphere at UFC 178 was electric, but the tension in the back was suffocating. Poirier was visibly emotional, fueled by a genuine hatred for the man across from him. He promised a whipping. He promised humiliation. Then this happened. Just 1 minute and 46 seconds into the very first round, a surgical left hook clipped Poirier behind the ear. The diamond crashed to the canvas, and a few hammer fists later, the circus act had become the main attraction.
Tips. Conversation. Looking to finish the fight. That's it.
The man who was supposed to be exposed had just announced himself as the most dangerous predator in the division. But if you think a top contender getting starched was a shock, wait until you see what happened when Conor faced the man who hadn't lost a single fight in over a decade. Jose Aldo, UFC Law 94.
Falar quando tá longe. Lá dentro não vai falar nada. Porque a próxima vez que estiver frente a frente, eu vou bater muito na cara dele.
Jose Aldo wasn't just a champion. He was the king of Rio. For 10 years, he had dismantled legends with his leg kicks and iron chin. When McGregor arrived, Aldo looked at him like a bug to be squashed. The world tour for UFC 194 was psychological warfare at its peak. Conor stole his belt, mocked his heritage, and laughed in his face. Aldo was no longer just fighting for a title. He was fighting to humiliate the man who had disrespected his legacy. Aldo's fans in Brazil were certain this loud-mouthed Irishman was walking into a buzzsaw. Aldo had the touch of death. He swore he would teach McGregor what a real champion looks like. Then this happened. As the bell rang, the world held its breath. Aldo lunged forward with a trademark combination. McGregor slipped through a single left hook, and the king fell. 13 seconds.
Smiling. Oh! He slipped him!
That's all it took. One punch to end a 10-year reign. The man who swore to humiliate McGregor was left face down on the canvas, while the world watched in stunned silence. It remains the fastest knockout in UFC title history. The world was in shock, but the critics still weren't satisfied. He can't wrestle, they said. A real powerhouse wrestler will crush him. That's Chad Mendes. Chad Mendes, UFC 189.
I will be happy to punch this dude in the face. Even if it's one solid time, I'm good to go.
When Jose Aldo pulled out of their first scheduled meeting, Chad "Money" Mendes stepped up. Mendes was an elite NCAA wrestler with explosive power, the ultimate kryptonite for a striker like McGregor. Mendes didn't just plan to win, he planned to embarrass Conor on the ground. He called him one-dimensional and laughed at the idea that a stand-up fighter could survive his takedowns.
Curled up like a bitch. You were curled up like a bitch. I butchered your body. You couldn't even lift your hands up.
During the weigh-ins, Mendes was pure confidence. He promised to put McGregor on his back and break his face. For the first round and a half of the fight, it looked like he was right. He slammed Conor to the mat, and opened a massive gash over his eye with brutal elbows. Conor was bloodied, battered, and pinned. Then this happened. With less than a minute left in the second round, Conor scrambled back to his feet. He was exhausted, but his eyes were locked on Mendes' chin. A signature straight left landed, then another. Mendes, who had promised to humiliate the Irishman with wrestling, couldn't take the touch of death. He folded at 4:57 of the second round. The wrestler had been conquered. Conor had the featherweight belt, but he wanted more. He wanted to do something no one had ever done. But standing in his way was the underground king, a man who called Conor an easy payday. Eddie Alvarez, UFC 2-5.
This is going bad for him now. It's all going downhill. Round 3 is just a knockout.
Eddie Alvarez was the lightweight champion of the world and a veteran of the toughest fights in MMA history. When Conor moved up to 155 pounds to challenge him, Eddie was insulted. He told the media that Conor was an ordinary fighter and that he had never fought anyone of Eddie's caliber. "I'm going to take him to the ground and do whatever I want," Eddie sneered. He promised to humiliate the featherweight and send him back down to the smaller divisions. The stage was Madison Square Garden, the first ever UFC event in New York. The pressure was astronomical. Eddie walked in with the swagger of a man who knew he was about to collect an easy check. Then this happened. What followed was perhaps the greatest individual performance in UFC history. Conor didn't just beat Eddie. He treated him like a sparring partner. He knocked Eddie down 3 times in the first round alone.
One more look at that. Boom. And then watch this bang with the second one.
He put his hands behind his back and taunted the champion. Eddie, the man who promised humiliation, looked lost. In the second round, a 4-punch combination sent Eddie crashing.
Getting better here in this round, though.
Oh, man. Until that. Oh, he's done. He's done.
Conor became the first simultaneous 2-division champion, and Eddie Alvarez became a footnote in history. After years away from the Octagon and a crushing loss to Khabib, many thought the notorious one was finished. They thought he was a shell of his former self. Donald "Cowboy" Cerrone was the man tasked with finishing the job. Donald Cerrone, UFC 246.
You knew you were going to retire?
Before I fought McGregor.
Donald Cerrone is a legend. He has the most wins and the most finishes in UFC history.
Now the turn! Oh, don't hit with the right hand!
When he signed to fight Conor in 2020, the narrative was the battle of the veterans. Cowboy promised a war. He promised to stand and trade. But most importantly, he promised to show the world that McGregor's time had passed. Many experts believed Cowboy's experience and variety of weapons would finally humble the Irish superstar. The lights went down at the T-Mobile Arena. The foggy dew played. Conor looked calm. Cowboy looked ready for a 25-minute battle. Then this happened. The fight didn't last 25 minutes. It didn't even last 25 seconds. In the very first clinch, Conor did something no one expected. He used his shoulders. 4 explosive shoulder strikes shattered Cowboy's nose and broke his orbital bone instantly.
Boom! And again, he sets it up. Boom! Again, on the nose.
Before Cowboy could even register what was happening, a head kick connected and a barrage of punches finished the job. Total time, 40 seconds. The legend who promised a war was dismantled by weapons he didn't even know existed.
It was an honor to call your fight. Conor McGregor!
And what an embrace there.
From the streets of Dublin to the heights of Madison Square Garden, the story is always the same. They talk, they promise, they swear to humiliate the man with the silver tongue and the golden left hand. But in the world of mixed martial arts, talk is cheap, and the Octagon is a lonely place for a braggart whose plan falls apart. Conor McGregor isn't just a fighter. He's a psychological nightmare. He gets into your head, takes your pride, and then takes your consciousness. Whether you love him or hate him, you cannot deny the trail of humiliated legends he has left in his wake. But the question remains, after all the belts, the money, and the injuries, does the notorious one have one more miracle left in those fists? Or is the era of humiliation finally over for his opponents? Let us know in the comments. Who was the most humbled fighter on this list? Was it the 13-second KO of Aldo or the shoulder strike clinic against Cowboy? If you enjoyed this trip through the most brutal moments in MMA history, make sure to subscribe to the Band-Aid Battalion MMA. We're building the most hardcore community on YouTube, and we want you in the ranks. Hit that bell icon so you're the first to know when our next deep dive drops. This is the Band-Aid Battalion, where the fight never ends. We'll see you in the next one.